Well, hello there, welcome back to my channel. And today's video is all about FastAPI and how we can develop simple web applications using FastAPI. So as you know, in Python, like there are a total of popular three web-based frameworks that are available. The first being the Django, the second being Flask, and third is this FastAPI. It was launched somewhere around 2018, and after that it has taken the market by a storm. There are simply a couple of reasons for it, but I believe the most popular reason why FastAPI is so popular is simply because of its performance, and its performance is at par with the likes of Node.js and Golang based web servers. And the reason, there's a simple reason for it. The reason being, this FastAPI is based on asynchronous web based framework under the hood, and it also needs a ASGI web server to run it. And I believe that's the main primary reason why FastAPI is so much better in terms of performance, like as compared to its previous counterparts. So without wasting any more time, let's get started and see how you can build a very simple web application and see the concepts of query parameters, post parameters, and how do you handle get and post request using the FastAPI in Python. So to get started with FastAPI, all we need to do is simply install FastAPI and a couple of other packages which are necessary. And the best place to get started is the website itself. It's extremely well documented, and I would strongly recommend that you go through the website first, understand how it works, and then get started. And since it's well documented, it's very easy to get started, but just by going through the code samples that are there on the website. So what we will do is firstly install the FastAPI and other packages, which is FastAPI and UVCon, using the PIP package manager. So let me just open up Visual Studio Code and install these two packages, and then we will go through the base code that is available and then get started about exploring the other features of it. So we are not going to do a deep dive of FastAPI. All we are going to do is cover some basic aspects of it, which includes how to handle URL parameters, how to handle query parameters, how to handle post and get request. So we are gonna keep things as simple as that, nothing complicated. So in order to get started, you just need to obviously install the packages, then import FastAPI and declare the module, declare the global route, and simply get started. But in order to run this piece of code, you don't need to just type python space a file name.py. You need a web server for this, and in this case it's an asynchronous web server or asynchronous gateway interface, what we call as ASGI, and UVCon is an ASGI that we are going to use, and it is also mentioned in the documentation. So for that you need to type UVCon. So this will be your file name followed by the module that you are using out here, which is app. So in my case both are app, so app:app space hyphen reload. So hyphen reload signifies that we are actually going to use the hot reload functionality. So once I execute this command, the web server gets started, and then we can simply hit the localhost server that is hosted over here, and you will be able to see the message that you are getting, which is hello world. Now the interesting part is that there are a couple of things that are that is more interesting. Firstly, if you see our code base, we are not encoding the content type. Now if I open a Postman and let me just delete all this. So http localhost 3000. So I'm gonna select get send. Sorry, my bad, it's I think 8000. Yeah, if you see that you are already getting the content in JSON, and it's already passed. So what happens in FastAPI, by default the content type is set to application/JSON. So you don't need to explicitly define in the return message. So in the return you can just pass the JSON that you want to send out, and by default it will be taken care. So that's how easy it is, and that's how things are getting handled under the hood. So now let's explore more basic concepts of handling URL parameters, and then we will go into handling query parameters and handling post request. So in this case, it's a get request that we are going to handle. So app.get and here we'll just mention the route, which will be user, followed by the parameter. So we just need to define the name of the parameter or variable. So here I want the username, and I will define the function. So it will be an async function, async def user name, and as a parameter I'm gonna pass a variable that I've just declared above, and return will be simply user underscore name followed by the variable. As simple as that, nothing else. Now if I open a Postman, if I type in user/every171, so I should get the response back as username and every171. That is what I'm getting. So that's how you can handle some URL parameters. Now let's see how to handle the query parameters, like what we can pass in the query string of the URL. So again, similar way, we are going to define the route, which is app.get user. We'll just skip it like this only for now. Then async def, let's say contact details. Sorry, my bad. So you know what I'm gonna do, I'm also gonna rename this to contact details because I already have that user route defined. So so here let's mention the parameters that we are expecting from the request body. So I don't know why I clicked saved. Okay, so it's a habit for me to save, and what ifecon does is simply reload it, and that's why it has shown me an error. Anyways, let's continue. So here I need to get the contact details. So in this case I'm interested in, let's say, user ID. So I'm just gonna define as ID, and I need to define the type of the ID, so which in this case will be int, and I can also set a default value to it, which is 0, then a comma, and simply let's say email dot type str, and followed by a default value. Let's say the default value is abc@abc.com. So now what we are going to return is simply what we are getting. So return, this will be your ID followed by your ID, and email followed by your email. So let me open a Postman, and here will be contact details. I think I've already given it. Okay, so here will be ID and email equals to avirup.basu@live.com. So once I send this, I'll be getting the same in return. Now let's check out some cool things, the error handling aspect of FastAPI by default. So since I have already defined a default value, so let's say I'm not gonna pass out anything. So I'm just gonna cut this, and let's say I'm just gonna pass contact details and nothing else. So for that also we are going to get the response back as whatever default value we have set it. Now if I pass the values, but let's assume that we don't mention the correct types. So under email, let's send a number, and under ID, let's send a string. So now by default, if you're using Flask or something of that sort, then you would have received an error in your server itself. So your server would have crashed. But in this case, since we are using Avicon and Python FastAPI has error handling capability, thus what we get a response back is the actual error. That value is not a valid integer, and your web server won't crash. That's one of the very important aspects of FastAPI in terms of error handling, and that's what makes it too easy to get to be used in actual real world applications. So let me just go back to default one, and I am getting whatever response I want. Now let's explore the post request part. But before going to that part, let me just mention one thing. Like when you're dealing with FastAPI, especially with post request, it's always better to use Pydantic. So Pydantic is a data validation toolkit that is available in Python, and FastAPI uses Pydantic to handle your post request. So what we will do is simply import base model from Pydantic. So from Pydantic, import, I don't know what I'm typing today. From Pydantic, import base model, and we need to define a class which will validate the data. So we are going to name our class as data. So this is going to be our base model of the data that we receive through a post API call. So class data, and here we need to pass the parameter which is the base model. And what I want out here is I don't want a specific definition of the data that I'm receiving, so I'm just gonna keep it generic for now, which is dictionary. So here I'll just mention dictionary. Now let's write a function to handle the post request. So what this does is essentially I have created a class data base model, the Pydantic base model as a parameter, and here I'm expecting the data from the post API call through which data will be the name of the key, and whatever we can send as a nested JSON will be sent out. So app.post, and here we are going to define the route which will be post details, async def post details. Here we have to mention the name of a particular variable which will contain that request body. Let's just mention as request data. Request data colon the type of it, which is data, the class that we have created, and colon, and simply for now we are just gonna return what we were getting it, and then we are going to perform some functionalities. Return request data. So I'm going to save it, open up Postman. So I've already created a request body, data as name and email. So I'm going to send it. Sorry, my bad. So here will be, I think, what was the name of the route again? Post details. And this will be post sent out, and we are getting that particular, whatever we are sending, we are getting it in return. Now let's handle this body. Let's do some processing and then send back the processed data to the calling API. I mean calling client, because this is an API. So what we will do is simply save it in a variable request data JSON is equals to, firstly, request data dot JSON. So what essentially happens out here is that this returns a JSON string. However, what I want is to be passed it as a JSON dictionary and save it in this variable such that I can add in some value and then pass it back to the client. So what I will do out here is that JSON.loads, and for that also we need to import JSON. I think without importing JSON also it should work, but still because now it comes in the default toolkit. So JSON.loads and your JSON string, and now I'm gonna add a value to it, request data JSON. Let's say the key will be processed with this kind of a flag and set it to true. And here I'm gonna send request data JSON. So if I open a Postman, if I send it, I should get that field as returned. So what is happening here? We are getting a JSON string converted into a JSON dictionary using JSON.loads. Now adding a new value to the dictionary and simply sending it back. So that is how you can get started with FastAPI in Python. And I have not covered in full details about the various aspects of it. It was more the superficial level, and probably I will make more videos on FastAPI and how to integrate it with real life web applications. I'll also try to see if I can draw a comparative study between all the three frameworks that are available in Python. And just to let you know, probably we can do a project in the future in one of the video series in which we're actually using this FastAPI in Python for an actual implementation of an IoT project. So hopefully we will make a series on that as well. And thanks for watching this video. If you're still watching it, thank you again. And please share your feedback in the form of comments. Please like my video if you liked it, and also subscribe to my channel. Thank you and have a good day.